My wife, who had been dinking with me, got pregnant and tried to trick me. When I threw the paternity test in her face, she was completely panicked. She knelt in front of me and cried bitterly, saying that she was willing to give me a child as compensation. But I didn't care anymore. My wife is an anesthesiologist at the hospital, and she stealthily makes me dizzy once a week. She does this so that she can carry on a clandestine love affair with her crush beside me. She does this so that she can carry on a clandestine love affair with her white whale beside me. However, after a few times, I developed a resistance to the anesthetic and woke up during their clandestine encounters. She, however, felt that this made things more thrilling, convinced I would not remember any of it once I fully regained consciousness. And then she got pregnant, but we were Dink the whole time. What's more, she dared to trick me into thinking I was the father. When I slapped the paternity test results on her face, she panicked. She knelt before me, weeping bitterly, offering to bear a child for me as compensation. By then, however, I did not care anymore. Note: Dink, dual income, no kids, refers to a married couple without kids, both partners are working. I woke up with a splitting headache. I wanted to move, but I was so weak that I could only limp to the bed. The bed beneath me was trembling. Perhaps noticing that I had opened my eyes, Lana Rattimore looked a bit flustered, but she did not stop what she was doing. I knew the man, her crush, Orlando Bloom. Throughout our marriage, she had always vehemently claimed that she was Dink and that she couldn't bear to get pregnant and have children. But when faced with Orlando Bloom, her secret lover, she couldn't wait to bear his child. I stared fixedly at the ceiling, my eyes rimmed blood red in fury, wishing I could tear this adulterer prostitute apart limb from limb. Lana Rattimore was a cardiovascular surgeon. Before this, she was an anesthesiologist. She was so confident in her anesthetic skills that she didn't worry that I would remember what they had said. As they talked, I gradually understood the truth. Turns out, it wasn't the first time I'd been anesthetized. During this month, Lana Rattimore sedated me once a week so that she could secretly fool around with Orlando Bloom by my side. This was Orlando Bloom's special sexual obsession, simply for the thrill of it. He even joked that it would make it easier for Lana Rattimore to fall pregnant with his child. It was my first time waking up during their dalliances, but Lana Rattimore didn't care and even took my sudden sobriety as a spice. Each sentence she uttered felt like a slow cut to my heart until it was utterly shredded. I bit my lower lip hard till blood seeped out. This was the only place I could move on my entire body. How pitiful he is. Not only will he have to support my woman, but he'll also have to raise my child. Lana Rattimore sneered disdainfully. Her words crushed my dignity. This is what he owes me. He owes a life to our Rattimore family. I was never a Dink. I just didn't want to bear his child. Just these two sentences were enough to completely rip my sanity into shreds, leaving behind a dull pain in my chest. Orlando Bloom left with Lana Rattimore, saying they were going to celebrate the birth of their child. They didn't return until late at night. After the anesthesia had worn off, I was like a walking corpse, slowly getting up to deal with the wound on my lips in the bathroom. Looking at myself in the mirror, I noticed my face was frighteningly pale. Lana Rattimore might not even be bothering to hide it from me. She has made up her mind to give birth to Orlando Bloom's child. Pulling out the marriage certificate and seeing the photo on it, I sat on the sofa until the early morning. My phone, sitting on the table, rang a few times with calls from Lana Rattimore, but I simply ignored them. Not until morning did I hear the sound of the door being opened. Lana Rattimore came in, body reeking of alcohol and her face flushing red. Seeing me sitting on the sofa, she was livid, pointing at me and scolding me. "Why don't you answer my calls? Now you won't even pick me up?" Seeing her peeved expression, I only found it ludicrous. "Didn't Orlando Bloom go with you? Wouldn't my picking you up spoil your fun?" Hearing me mention Orlando Bloom, Lana Rattimore's face froze for a moment, giving me a probing look. Seeing that my expression did not change further, she was relieved again. She thinks I'm jealous because she went out with Orlando Bloom. Lana Rattimore seemed to have been greatly wronged, but her words were full of mockery toward my petty mindset. "Are you doubting me? I've told you that Orlando and I are just friends. Why do you always question our innocence? She told these lies sincerely, which made me wonder if I was wrong about her. But the things I've seen could not possibly be false. She just lied so much that she believed it. Her conversation with Orlando Bloom still echoed in my ears, like a thorn buried in my heart. Every time I think about it, that thorn digs deeper, more painful. Thinking about it, I don't want to say much to her anymore. I got up from the sofa and put the marriage certificate on the table. Looking at the grievance on her beautiful face, I finally made up my mind. Let's divorce. As soon as the words fell, Lana Rattimore was like a lit firecracker, visibly furious. She rushed up to me, flinging the marriage certificate in my face. The sharp edge of the marriage certificate cut my eye's corner, and blood seeped from the wound. Yet it seemed she couldn't see that at all, focused solely on scolding me and defending her innocent beloved. Crazy like a loon, she grabbed everything around her and threw it at me, utterly disregarding any harm she might inflict. Divorce? How dare you divorce me? Just because I went out to dinner with Orlando, you want a divorce. She stared at me hard, fire sparking in her eyes. Could you face my father? Are you worthy of his dying wishes? Seeing I didn't immediately respond, Lana Rattimore yelled at me. Speak up. Are you mute? Faced with her rage, I no longer had the strength to argue. I've grown tired and exhausted over these years. Every time I brought up her and Orlando Bloom, she'd cover it up with anger. She didn't even hesitate to use her deceased father as a shield. It always ends with my humble apologies. Lana Rattimore enjoyed manipulating me and also knew that I would not leave her, so she hurt me recklessly. If I hadn't overheard the two of them, I would not have known until now that she had always hated me. My eyes were full of frost. Every last shred of affection I had for Lana Rattimore vanished without a trace. Next Wednesday, when we both have time, let's meet at the court. This was the first time Lana Rattimore had seen me so determined. Confusion flickered across her face. She tried to hold my hand, but I avoided her. She pursed her lips and gradually softened her tone, speaking gently. Is it we not having kids that you want a divorce? It's okay. I have thought it all through. I'm willing to bear a child for you. Upon seeing her suddenly pliant demeanor, even desperate flattery, I felt an uncontainable sense of revulsion. She's trying to make me a doormat and let me raise her and Orlando Bloom's child. There's no need. I opened the door and left, disregarding her attempts to stop me. Watching me leave with such determination, Lana Rattimore lost her composure, wailing loudly. I will never divorce you. You are dreaming. In preparation for divorcing Lana Rattimore, I rented a short-term apartment near my office. The company has always wanted to establish a branch in another city, and my boss mentioned this to me several times and wanted me to oversee operations as the general manager of this branch. But I was always reluctant to be far from Lana Rattimore. Therefore, I've turned down the invitation multiple times. Now that I've decided to divorce her, I also no longer want to stay in this city filled with unpleasant memories. Thud. Come in. Hearing the voice from inside, I opened the door to my boss's office. Mr. Grinter, about the branch, I'd like to give it a shot. The moment I entered, I stated my purpose bluntly. Being handpicked and promoted by Mr. Grinter, he has always trusted me. This time, too, he wishes to have a trusted subordinate at the branch. Hearing my voluntary solicitation, he appears a bit surprised, but doesn't ask much, simply patting my shoulder with a smile. Great, I trust you the most. Now that you've agreed, I can rest assured. After expressing my gratitude to him, I drive to the local court. Today is the day I and Lana Rattimore come to the local courthouse for divorce. This is the same courthouse where she and I were married. However, our relationship failed to stand the test of time and has changed. I am not even sure if Lana Rattimore still loves me. Indeed, I owe her my life. Her dad was a firefighter. Back then, I had just graduated from university and was doing an internship at a company. I had been with Lana Rattimore for 1 year, and both our families had met. That day, a sudden fire engulfed the entire office building, and I was surrounded by thick smoke, unable to find an exit. Just as I thought I might die there, it was her father who rescued me from the fire, at the cost of his own life. A steel bar had pierced his body, and by the time he was sent to the hospital, it was too late to save him. Lana Rattimore's father's dying wish was for me to take good care of his daughter. I attended his funeral. Lana Rattimore was crying inconsolably, appearing very frail. I felt I owed Lana Rattimore something. I was willing to give everything, even my remaining life, to make up for what I owed her. So we got married naturally. Even after the wedding, when she told me she didn't want kids, I had no objections. As long as we're together, that's happiness for me. Just when I thought our happiness would continue, her crush, Orlando Bloom, returned to the country. After Orlando Bloom's return, Lana Rattimore seemed to have become a different person. She dedicated all her attention to Orlando Bloom, no trace of my presence in her eyes. Being an anesthetist at the hospital, her work was busy and her free time was limited, yet she was willing to accompany Orlando Bloom after work. She even took Orlando Bloom to gatherings of her hospital colleagues. In their eyes, Orlando Bloom was her husband. I had argued with her about all this, to no avail. In the end, Lana Rattimore would always use her father's death to silence me, saying that I owed her and the Rattimore family. The last time I accidentally woke up to the truth was the final straw that crushed me. Lana Rattimore was not a dink. She just hated me. Even having my kid makes her sick. Buzz, buzz. The vibration from my cell phone interrupted my recollections. I grabbed the phone and glanced, realizing that the time agreed had passed. The call was from my mother. As soon as I answered, my mother's joyful voice rang out from the other side. "Beldrick, why didn't you tell me that Lana is pregnant?" From the other end of the phone, I could vaguely hear the laughter of Lana Rattimore. I clenched the phone tightly, and veins popped out on my hand. I had never expected Lana Rattimore to go straight to my mother instead of coming to the courthouse. Knowing my mother had a weak heart, she was sure that I wouldn't dare argue with her in front of my mother. When I rushed home, Lana Rattimore was sitting next to my mother. Seeing me enter, she smirked at me and caressed her belly. "Beldrick, I'm pregnant." Lana Rattimore was watching my reaction from the corner of her eye. When she saw that I was unruffled, she seemed a bit aggrieved. She walked over to me and grabbed my hand, trying to get me to touch her belly. "Aren't you happy? This is our child." What she did not expect was that my face did not show any sign of excitement. Instead, there was an endless coldness. "Lana Rattimore, that's enough? Don't you know if this is my baby?" Lana Rattimore deliberately announced her pregnancy in front of my mother. She thought that I was completely under control. She firmly believed that I was unaware of her secret affair with Orlando Bloom and assumed I would accept the child in her belly as my own. I took out the divorce agreement I always carry with me and threw it in front of her, ignoring her increasingly embarrassed expression. "I don't want to make a fuss of this. After you sign this agreement, we will no longer have any relationship. I have tried my best to contain my anger, to preserve our respectability." Contrarily, Lana Rattimore displayed uncontrollable anger. She took out her prepared pregnancy test and paternity test results. "Beldrick Winslet, what do you mean? I know that you thought I was having an affair with Orlando Bloom, but I'm carrying your child." Tears overflowed from her eyes as she lamented, appealing to my mother with a pleading look. My mother, with knitted brows, tried to calm me. Facing Lana Rattimore's determination with her paternity result, I took out my phone and showed her the evidence I had been collecting these past few weeks. "In this period, you have been taking out lots of anesthesia medication from the hospital, and Orlando Bloom made quite a profit by selling it. Did you think I wouldn't investigate? Either divorce, or I will send both you and Orlando Bloom to jail. You choose." I don't need to see the DNA test results to know it's fake. To fulfill her desire to be child-free, I had a secret vasectomy. How can she be carrying my baby now? Lana Rattimore grits her teeth, her eyes filled with resentment as if she wishes to devour me alive. "How could you find out? I used enough anesthesia." Now that I've exposed her, Lana Rattimore is no longer acting in front of me, coldly snorting, and every word she says is like a stab in my heart. "We are both Dink, so does it matter whose child I'm carrying? Even if the child I'm pregnant with is Orlando Bloom's, isn't that child still in your name? Isn't he still your child?" Her words hit one after another, and here she became more and more agitated. "Furthermore, I'm the one pregnant. I have the right to choose whose child I want to bear. Thud. My mother, clutching at her chest in pain, collapses, unable to accept what Lana Rattimore was saying. Amid the chaos, I rush my mother to the hospital. The surgery would require a highly skilled cardiovascular surgeon, and with time being crucial now, only Lana Rattimore can save my mother. She stands there arrogantly, watching me leisurely, but her words pin me to a stake of shame. Promise me we won't divorce, and let me bear this child. Then I will save your mother. By the way, apologize to me. You have to kneel and kowtow 3 times. As I held my fist, the pain of my nails embedded in the flesh kept me alert. My mom is still lying here in limbo. How dare you mention that child? Rage is nearly burning my sanity to ashes. My mother lies uncertain of life and death in the operating room. Yet, Lana Rattimore is still thinking about her child with Orlando Bloom, even threatening me with my mother's life, forcing me not to divorce her. She is trying to force me to acknowledge this child. As for making me kneel and apologize, it's merely an added condition, aimed only to humiliate me, to strip away my dignity entirely. At this point, I realize that the death of Mr. Rattimore has long since become an unbridgeable gap between us. Only now can I accept the fact that she doesn't love me anymore. Seeing that I had not moved, she crossed her arms in front of me, urging me impatiently. What are you waiting for? Don't you want to save your mother? Lana Rattimore glanced at the operating room with a smile of certainty. In this operation, only I have the highest success rate. If you are not willing, others may not necessarily be able to save your mother's life. I can't believe she can say that with a smile. She didn't care about my mother's life at all. My mother was merely a bargaining chip in her negotiation, manipulated at her will. Hasn't my mother been good enough to you? She treated you like a daughter after we got married. My voice was hoarse. After our marriage, my mother knew that her father died in the fire to save me, and she doted on Lana Rattimore, even better than me, her son. But now, as my mother teeters on the edge of life and death, Lana Rattimore just stands by, indifferent. As if touched her raw nerve, Lana Rattimore's smile gradually faded, and she scolded me coldly. Beldrick Winslet, you have yourself to blame. It's you who picked a fight with me. Kneel, or prepare to get a corpse. She issued her ultimatum to me. Despite the doctor once again urging us to make a decision, Lana Rattimore seemed unaware, waiting for my response. My once upright back gradually hunched, and I knelt in front of her. The heavy thump of my knees hitting the hospital floor echoed through me. The icy floor seeped into my bones, and the chilling sensation is a lingering wound that will be hard to erase. Thunk, thunk, thunk. By the time I lifted my head again, my forehead was already covered in bruises. Yet, I seemed to be numb to the pain and unsteadily rose to my feet. I stared at the smiling Lana Rattimore. She held the hope of my mother's life in her hand. Now, can you save my mother? Seeing my humility, Lana Rattimore smirked in satisfaction. As I watched her get ready to change into her scrubs, I let out a sigh of relief. Just a few steps into her stride, her phone rang. Her face gradually stiffened when she got on the phone, and she was about to rush out. I hurriedly blocked her, but she fiercely slapped me. Orlando had a car accident. I need to go save him. Even though she slapped me, I was not going to let her go. My tone had turned to pleading. If he had a car accident, the ambulance would take him to the hospital. You should focus on my mother's surgery now. Nonetheless, Lana Rattimore refused to heed my words. She angrily shoved me away and yelled, "You don't know anything. Orlando is terrified of pain. Without me, he will be afraid. Your mother's surgery can be done without me, but Orlando Bloom, he only has me." As she finished, tears welled up in her eyes, and she began to sob, stamping her feet anxiously. My mother lay in the operating room for so long that I never saw her shed a tear. Seeing that I still refused to move away, Lana Rattimore clenched her teeth, took a scalpel from a tray beside her, and directly stabbed me with it. The sudden pain made me falter, and I knelt on the ground. Could only watch her leave. It was the nurse who discovered me falling on the ground. My gaze remained fixed on the direction Lana Rattimore was leaving, seeing her choose Orlando Bloom over me once again. Sadness overwhelmed me, sweeping away my other emotions. I was utterly disheartened by Lana Rattimore. The nurse helped me up and took me to get my wound stitched. While getting my wound stitched, I anxiously awaited news from the operating room. Though Lana Rattimore had the best success rate with this surgery, I still harbored hope. However, reality often ran counter to my hopes. The moment I learned of my mother's death, I no longer heard what the doctor was saying afterward. The world came crashing down before me. I could barely hold myself up. Tears began to fall before I even realized it. Due to my emotional upheaval, my newly stitched wound reopened, seeping out bright red blood. But I couldn't fall. My mother was gone, and I had to deal with her death. Ignoring the nurse's advice, I staggered to the elevator, preparing to see my mother for the last time in the morgue. When the elevator opened, I saw Lana Rattimore, who had abandoned me, and Orlando Bloom, who seemed to be unscathed. Lana Rattimore scrutinized me from head to toe, and when she saw the wound on my waist, her expression seemed a bit unnatural. If you hadn't stopped me then, I wouldn't have. Seeing her feigned compassion, I couldn't help but scoff. Wouldn't have what? Wouldn't have breached our agreement and left, or wouldn't have gone to find him. There was not a scratch on Orlando Bloom. Without giving it a second thought, I knew that his so-called car accident was just a lie to deceive Lana Rattimore. Yet it was this very lie that led to an innocent calamity befalling my mother, who now lay lifeless in the morgue. Hearing my derision, Lana Rattimore snorted coldly and said dismissively, "Your mother's surgery can be done without me. There was no other choice. I couldn't leave Orlando alone." Upon hearing Lana Rattimore mention my mother, my eyes glowed bright red with anger, and I pointed at her nose and rebuked. "You have no right to mention my mother. If it wasn't for you, my mother wouldn't have suffered a heart attack, let alone die on the operating table." By the end, my voice had become hoarse from shouting. Lana Rattimore frowned, looking as if she didn't believe a word I said. "Beldrick Winslet, don't be too excessive. It hasn't been that long. How could the surgery have failed so quickly? I know you're upset, but you can't say things like that." Orlando Bloom was also chiming in with a face of undisguised ridicule. "You must be lying to make Lana feel guilty. It's disgusting." This time I didn't let Orlando Bloom off the hook. I kicked him over and tossed him out of the elevator by the collar. I blocked Lana Rattimore, who wanted to leave the elevator, and pressed for the morgue on the basement floor. "Don't believe me? Well, let me show you." There was one other thing that I didn't say. I want Lana Rattimore to apologize to my mother personally. I dragged her to my mother's corpse and flung her onto the ground. Lana Rattimore was in a panic. She didn't dare to look at my mother. I knew she felt guilty. She didn't dare. When I saw my mother's corpse, I felt my heart started to ache. It seemed as if I was feeling her pain. "Did you see that? Are you satisfied now? Lana Rattimore, is this the outcome you were hoping for?" Tears welled up in my eyes. I was overwhelmed with emotion and almost drowned by the endless pain. Lana Rattimore shrank into a corner. Upon hearing my accusations, she quickly shook her head in denial. "No, that's not it. I didn't know it would turn out like this. I didn't do it intentionally." Anyone else could have successfully pulled off this surgery, I thought. At this, Lana Rattimore bit her lip. She knew herself. No matter how she tried to explain now, it would be nothing more than sophistry. I sneered at her avoidance of the fact. "The divorce papers will be delivered to you by my lawyer. And I won't cover up your theft of the analgesics in the hospital. Just leave it to the lawyer." Upon hearing this, Lana Rattimore instantly panicked, latching onto my pants leg and crying, "No, you can't do this. I'm your wife. How could you treat me like this?" Seeing me not responding, she kneeled before my mother, kowtowing and apologizing as she sobbed and wailed. "I admit my mistake. I do. I'm sorry, Auntie." I could only find the absurd scene before me laughable. Nothing that Lana Rattimore does now can shake my determination to make her and Orlando Bloom face punishment. I'm weary. After handling my mother's funeral, I plan to pack my things and leave this city forever. I start to walk away, but Lana Rattimore grabs hold of my pant leg. "Do you really can't forgive me? My father saved your life. Can you bear to send me to jail?" I didn't do it on purpose. I look at Lana Rattimore's panic-stricken face with indifference. So, she exactly knew that stealing anesthesia to drug me was illegal. But at Orlando Bloom urging, she did it, again and again, although she knew it was wrong. A life for a life. I owe you nothing. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. With that, I no longer care about Lana Rattimore's cry behind me, and I get in the elevator without a second glance. As the elevator doors close, I glance through the gap, catching a glimpse of Lana Rattimore's expression on her face. Her expression was a mixture of regret and fear. I'm not sure if it's my imagination, but she seemed to be scared of losing me. Inside the crematorium, I watched as my mother was consumed by flames, and in the end became a small box in my hands. My father and I arranged my mother's funeral together. After the funeral, I boarded a plane to the branch office. Through the plane's window, I watched the city, which held so many memories of Lana Rattimore and me, slowly shrink into a dot until it disappeared. I felt a sense of relief. Lana Rattimore never gave up trying to contact me. As soon as I got off the plane and turned on my phone, I saw numerous missed calls. Because our divorce proceeding hasn't finished yet, I didn't block Lana Rattimore's contact. At that moment, I received another call from her. Continual indifference on my part only provoked her to become even more relentless. When I answered the call, Lana Rattimore's tone was somewhat timid. I detected a clear attempt to ingratiate me from her words. "Beldrick, where is your mother buried? I want to see her." Listening to Lana Rattimore mention my mother, I felt nauseous. "There's no need. I don't think she would like to see you anymore. What do you want exactly? If it's about the divorce, then I have nothing to say to you. As for the anesthetics theft, she didn't steal a large amount, thus she was only detained for a few days. Still, she was dismissed by the hospital. Surely, no other medical institution would hire such a person with a criminal record." Lana Rattimore paused upon hearing my words. To my surprise, she did not angrily retort, but instead said, "I went to your company today, but you weren't there, and they said you were at the branch. When you have time, shall we talk in person?" This was the first time I had seen Lana Rattimore with such a humble attitude towards me, no high attitude. I only responded coldly to her proposal. "What would we talk about? The child in your belly? The fact that you caused my mother's death?" Unable to bear my aggressive stance any longer, Lana Rattimore rebuked me. "Beldrick Winslet, can't you just talk nicely? When I spoke nicely, did you listen?" With one phrase, I rendered Lana Rattimore speechless. The call fell into silence. It was Lana Rattimore who actively broke the silence. "I have already aborted the child. I'm sincere to you," she said, nearly choking up, pleading. "I know I'm sorry. Can't you just give me one more chance?" I didn't care whether she had truly aborted the child or whether she was sincere towards me. At this point in our conversation, I had already exited the airport and met the person who came to pick me up. I waved at Katia Harden. Without a response, I hung up the phone. The passage of the years hadn't left any traces on her face. She looked just as she did in my memories. Reunited with an old friend, Katia smiled and opened the car door for me, and we exchanged pleasantries. "It's been a long time." Her words plunged me into memories past. Katia Harden and I could be considered childhood friends. We had managed to keep in touch all these years. But ever since I married Lana Rattimore, to avoid any suspicion, I progressively minimized my interactions with female friends. In contrast, Lana Rattimore seemed to have become even closer to Orlando Bloom. Sitting in the car on the way to the branch, Katia hesitated, glancing at me several times. I smiled at her and let her speak. "Did you get a divorce?" I first nodded, then shook my head. Yes and no. The divorce lawsuit is still going on. Once the dust settles, I will officially be divorced. Upon hearing my response, she seemed somewhat disappointed. "Then let's talk about it later. My mother knew you were coming and kept asking me to invite you to dinner. Katia is a local and has significantly contributed to the establishment of the branch office. She escorted me to the apartment I was renting. When she left, she didn't forget to remind me. Just remember, tell me once you're divorced. I don't want to earn a bad reputation." Katia wittily winked at me, and I could see the affection lingering in her eyes. But all of this will have to wait until I've sorted out all the trivial. The new home isn't far from the branch office, and also not far from Katia's home. She always brings me a lunchbox filled with the food prepared by her mother. Aunt Mafalda and my mother have known each other for many years, Even their cooking tastes are somewhat similar. The first time I tasted her food, I found myself on the brink of tears. Fearful that Kasia would spot my red-rimmed eyes, I kept my head down, tears falling into the lunchbox and mixed with rice swallowed by me. She asked me, "Do you like it?" Blinking back tears, I nodded. And in this way, half a month passed. The divorce lawsuit was over, and the court made its judgment. I was finally single now. I informed Katya about this good news for the first time and invited her to my house for dinner. Midway through the meal, however, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Lana Radamore, whom I hadn't seen in a while. She had lost a lot of weight, and her whole mental state was worrying. Carrying her luggage, Lana Radamore seemed to have traveled a long way. She attempted to walk into the house as soon as I opened the door, but I barred her way at the doorway. "What's the matter? Say it right here." Having followed me thousands of miles only to be met with rejection at my doorstep, Lana Radamore choked back tears at my cold demeanor. "I'm not trying to move in with you. I just wanted to talk with you." Pointing to the house across from mine, tears rolled down her face, leaving traces on her face. "I've rented the house right across. I just wanted to make amends. I know you hate me, but I was cheated by Orlando Bloom. It wasn't my fault." My face remained emotionless. Whenever I see Lana Radamore, I always think of my mother. There was no chance for us. 2 lives separated us on opposite sides of the abyss. "Lana Radamore, get this straight. We are divorced. We are now strangers. Whether it was anyone's fault, it's not the excuse for you to disturb me again." After that, I was ready to close the door. Lana Radamore grabbed hold of my sleeve, preventing me from closing the door. Without hesitation, I went on, and her outstretched forearm was bruised from the closing door. Yet she did not retract her arm. Crying out in pain, Lana Radamore did not let go, despite the hurt. "Can you give me one more chance? A chance to make anything right?" At this time, Katya heard the argument between me and Lana Radamore, and she came over. Lana Radamore was acquainted with Katya Harden. Upon seeing Katya in my room, she became agitated and pointed at her, yelling, "Is that why you came to the branch office? I wonder why you are so heartless. Turns out you want to divorce me because of her." She seemed to have found the reason for my change of heart and placed all the blame onto Katia. She did not consider her own previous mistakes at all. I thought she had changed, but Lana Radamore remained as she was. Lana Radamore gritted her teeth, staring fixedly at me with hatred in her eyes. Her expression was vicious. "I abort the kid for you. Not only do you not feel sorry for me, but you are also mingling with other women. Beldrick Winslet, you have no heart." I stood in front of Katya, looking at Lana Radamore vexatious, and all I could feel was immense fatigue. "She is my current colleague, and you don't make trouble out of nothing anymore." I couldn't believe that I would one day use the phrase, "make trouble out of nothing," on Lana Radamore. I quickly closed the door when she wasn't looking. After the door was closed, I heard her constantly knocking on the door. Seeing that I didn't open it, she shouted at the door, "I won't give up, Beldrick. I won't give up." I gave Katya a regretful smile. She expressed understanding and said that if I needed help, I could stay at her place for a few days. Hearing the wailing from outside the door, I spoke in a deep voice. "I'll handle it as soon as possible." During this period, Lana Radamore settled down across my door. I tried my best to avoid her. What I never expected was that I would see Orlando Bloom at the door across from me. I was somewhat surprised. Wasn't he supposed to be in jail for selling anesthetics? But after the sentence was handed down, I didn't pay attention to what happened next. Thinking about it now, he should have been released on bail. He was knocking on Lana Radamore's door, but there was no response from inside. When he saw me, Orlando Bloom looked resentful and glared at me angrily. "Beldrick Winslet, what kind of spell did you put on Lana, making her abandon me and come here? You tricked her into aborting our baby, you murderer." I looked at him indifferently and responded with a sneer. "Lana Radamore and I are divorced now. Stop dragging me into your mess." At the sound of my voice, the door was flung open. Lana Radamore looked at me and hurriedly explained, "Beldrick, I'm not in touch with him anymore." She cast a disgusted look at Orlando Bloom, quite different from the affection she used to. Looks like Lana Rattimore has also found out about those shady things concerning Orlando Bloom. Get away from my house. We have nothing to talk about. So, you're gonna break up with me for that bitch? Upon hearing Orlando Bloom insult me, Lana Rattimore slapped him in the face. This was the first time I had witnessed her confronting Orlando Bloom, and all because of me. Lana Rattimore wanted to say something else, but I just walked down the stairs to drive off to work. The branch company was just launching, and there were still plenty of things I had to take care of. Around noon, I heard some commotion downstairs at the office building. Katia came into my office with a stack of documents, with a strained smile on her face. I looked downstairs, querying, "What's going on downstairs?" "It's your ex-wife. Looks like she's desperate to get you back." Seeing this, I frown and rise to head downstairs. Katia follows me at my side. It's now lunchtime, yet all my coworkers are gathered on the first floor. Seeing me approach, they make a path for me. In the center of the crowd, dressed in a wedding dress, is Lana Rattimore. She stood among candles arranged in the shape of hearts, holding roses in her hands. When she sees me, her eyes light up. At one glance, I see that the wedding dress she's wearing is the same one we wore at our wedding. She went to great pains to get me back. I am not particularly interested in these sentimental acts. I merely give her a cold glance and prepare to leave. Upon seeing this, Lana Rattimore cries out, "Beldrick, don't you go!" She lifts her wedding dress and hurries over to me, falling to one knee. Before, it was my doing the wrong thing that made the big mistake. Lana Rattimore's expression is sincere, as if she truly understands her mistake and wants to mend it. I know, no matter what, you won't forgive me. But I'm only asking for a chance to make it up to you. She handed me the bouquet of roses, only to be stopped by Katia. Lana Rattimore's brows were furrowed, filled with anger. Katia replied with a slight smile and replied, "I'm sorry, as Beldrick's ex-wife, you don't even know that he's allergic to roses?" Lana Rattimore stared at me, seeing me far away from her, her face progressively turning pale. I didn't know." She repeated her statement in confusion. "Beldrick, I didn't know." Seeing Lana Rattimore's shattered expression, I just sighed. Throughout their marriage, she put all her faith and love in Orlando Bloom. Only after discovering Orlando Bloom's true colors did Lana Rattimore see me anew, recognize me anew. But time was too short for her to fully know me. Enough, Lana Rattimore. We are over, truly finished. Just leave me alone. After all these years, I'm tired. Lana Rattimore didn't dare to look me in the eyes, scared of being burnt by the disappointment reflected within. At that moment, the crowd surged again, and Orlando Bloom rushed in. His expression was fierce, and upon seeing the wedding dress on Lana Rattimore, his face turned even more unbearable. Orlando Bloom was visibly livid. He picked up a candle from the ground and threw it towards Lana Rattimore. "Bitch, don't play dumb? That's not what you said when you were pregnant with my child." His eyes were bloodshot, obsessed about the unborn child that had been terminated. The candle ignited Lana Rattimore's wedding gown, and fierce flames instantly engulfed her whole body. Katia pulled me backward and ordered security to douse the flames. In severe pain, Lana Rattimore howled, her body gradually being engulfed by the ferocious fire. Her last line of sight was locked on Orlando Bloom. She rushed towards Orlando Bloom. Orlando Bloom tried to run away, but tripped over the very candle on the ground and could only watch as Lana Rattimore embraced him. The two screamed amid the blazing flames. When the blazing fire was extinguished, they'd already become two embracing corpses. Since that day, I'm often startled awake in the middle of the night because I dreamt of Lana Rattimore's screams as she was burned by the fire. Facing the empty room, I always feel like she's watching me somewhere. Over time, my nerves had somewhat weakened. Seeing that I was emotionally distressed, Katia offered to move into my place. I teased her jokingly. "It has not got to the first base, isn't it a bit too soon?" Katia blushed slightly and subtly took my hand. "Well, from now on, okay?" I didn't pull my hand away. I thought it was time for me to embrace a new beginning. The end.